Okay, guys, so today I wanted to talk about a few different ways that you can build a force. Now, I'm not talking about the strategy behind what units you pick. I'm probably not going to enter into that with you because it's not my forte, to be honest. I mean, if you want us to go through like what units we'd pick for something and why, then I guess I can try that out. But I'm more talking about how you choose or what options you have for force building rules in a scenario. And they're going to be fairly important, right? This is a big part. The scenario layout that I gave you is not necessarily the only way to do it. I think, in fact, that some of the other BattleTech books use a different way of laying out the scenario. So it isn't necessarily the only way to do it, but you will almost always have to have some sort of force building. I mean, that's kind of the point. So, I mean, the very obvious, very simple first thought is pre-made forces. You'll get that a lot in the pre-made scenarios because most of those pre-made scenarios come from a box set or a very specific group of miniatures, and they want to use those miniatures because they assume that you've bought the box and you want to use the miniatures that are in the box, and possibly that they're the only ones you have. So they'll pre-make the forces based on what's in there. A lot of them will also give like a pre-made, a heavily restricted BV type deal. BV is another very, very obvious one. Usually for pickup games and things like that, where you've just got a scenario that you want to play through and it's not that big a deal, you go with BV. I like BV because it goes with a more military aspect of the units, right? And it's all aspects of that unit that relate to a military type, like a combat type effectiveness thing. It's a measure of its combat effectiveness. You can use C-bills, and I do like the idea of doing this, and I'm going to go through a scenario, I think, and try and build up a scenario with Adam, and we're going to do with money, because he's mentioned it a few times, and I've had some ideas on that. The, the, the positives to using money over BV is that the BV is the military like aspect of the unit, and the money, the C bills, is more the socio-economic impact of the unit, like ferrofibrous and endosteel and all that sort of thing. In BV, they don't really count for much, right? Ferrofibrous doesn't alter your BV that much because it's mainly the amount of armor that you've got, not the type of armor that you've got, unless it's something like fairly specific, like stealth armor and things like that. It doesn't really make that much difference. But in C-bills, ferrofibrous armor is difficult to produce. It's got certain rare elements in it, that sort of thing, right? So it's if you have a unit with ferrofibrous armor rather than standard armor, it will cost a lot more, right? So it's a good one. It's really good. One of the downsides to using C-bills is that it doesn't include the skill. So the BV includes the skill of the pilot in the military effectiveness of that unit, right? So you can change the unit's skills and it will alter the BV. It doesn't do that for money. And I don't think there's any real method for changing the specific skills of a unit with C-bills. There's some stuff in campaign ops, I think, about under availability. You can get elites and greens and veterans and all that sort of stuff. But I don't think there's a table where you can just say, okay, so if you make your piloting skill this much better, then you multiply the C-bills by that much, right? So there's always randomness in the campaign ops books, there's actually a role for availability. So you pick a unit and you pick a skill level and you say, okay, so I have to roll this amount or less or more in order to get that unit. So you could pick, say, a Wolverine, and you have to roll a 7 for a Wolverine. So you roll 2d6. As long as you get a 7 or better, you're allowed a Wolverine. If you don't get your 7 or better, then you're not allowed it, and you have to try something else, right? That's a way to do it. You can randomize it completely. So, like, come up with a table of the miniatures that you have and put the good ones up to one end and down to the other end, and put all the like fairly standard ones in the middle, and everybody just rolls to see what they get. The way that Adam and I did it for the missile videos, I think it was the missile pimping videos, where we had 2 of each weight class, and we rolled to see which weight class, and then we picked, and then the other person got the other one. If you've got a half a dozen of each weight class miniature, you can do that. You can say, okay, so roll to see what weight class you're allowed to pick from, and everybody gets to pick from that weight class, but you get to pick first. You pick in a specific order, sort of thing. You could also draft for them. You can assign different mechs to different cards. You could assign different mechs to different, like do a lucky dip type thing, you know. You can draft for them. You can randomize it. You can do a lucky dip. You can pre-make them. You can pay with money. You can go by tonnage. You could say, okay, everybody's allotted 200 tons. Do what you wanna, right? And you will see, if you don't put specifications on how they're allowed to spend or how they're allowed to build their force, you will see some seriously different forces coming out. Really. I mean, if you say you've got 4,000 points and you can spend it on anything you want, right? I mean, most serious BattleTech players could probably make a dozen different forces with 4,000 points. Some of them will be vehicles, some of them have infantry, some will be just one mech with a 0-0 pilot in it. Any number of different things. So if you say 4,000 points but you can't take above medium, then you're looking at like a lance, right? 4,000 points has to be vehicles. I mean, wow. You can set limits on piloting and gunnery skills, driving skills, etc. You can say, okay, nothing more than this, nothing less than that. You can put limits on how many units they're allowed to buy, which might influence which units they pick. So if you say you've got 10,000 points, but you're only allowed to take 3 units and you have to pick 3 units, then that could seriously alter how they do things. Yeah, I mean, you're looking at a lot of different ways to do a lot of different things. But the force building section is going to be fairly pivotal to your game. You can really adjust how the game is going to play, how it's going to flow, how easy it'll be, just by kind of just tweaking the force building thing, right? Light mechs are a bit faster to play with. They make for a faster game because they are so light and easy to bring down, but they are also sometimes difficult to hit. So if you make it only light mechs and only give them a little bit of BV and say, okay, you can't take more than 2 mechs and you give them enough to make good pilots, and that would be a very, very fast game. If you say, okay, so you can take a big mech and you can't, then, I mean, asymmetry is fine. You can make an asymmetrical force build. It's not a big deal. But yeah, there's a lot of different options, a lot of different ways to do it. If there's any specific one there that you thought was good, then let me know in the comments, but that's about 10 minutes, so I'm going to stop there. Yeah, it's a big, big topic. I'm probably going to cover a couple of those in a bit more detail later on as I go through scenarios, but that was just a rough idea. I hope these are doing well, and I'll catch you guys later.